Welcome to Explore, Explain, Highlights. In this highlights package, we'll be looking at Season 5, Episode 2, with our guest, Jess Carr, discussing their project, Since When Does Vogue Hate Text?
But I tend to keep a notes file just on my computer with little fragments of thoughts that I think might be interesting to explore. And so this was an idea that kind of was created in there, changed a little bit. There are definitely some inspirations that kind of culminated in this idea. I think probably the two most prominent ones were I saw this graphic by Bernard Rudofsky, I think it's pronounced, called from a book called Our Clothes Modern, and he had kind of mapped to where like pockets were on different clothing and where buttons were, and I thought the idea of mapping was really clever and just kind of very literal in terms of the data visualization. And the other piece was I was looking at the D3 contour map on Observable for work, but they had an example where they had the contour map of like newspapers and mapping where I guess like titles and stuff were. So I think those were kind of the seeds that planted into this larger project. Yeah, so the project it's an analysis of the amount of text that is on the covers of Vogue magazines. It kind of discusses that sort of journey from the start of Vogue, but it focuses mostly on the last 20 years or so. I think more broadly, the project kind of examines the economical, technological, and social trends through the lens of the cover design. And then my family had the subscription to Time magazine. And I think for those especially, I used to just look forward to the covers more than actual reading them themselves. And I think kind of lifestyle and fashion magazines are not maybe perceived like seriously or positively by society, perhaps as like a victim of like gender contamination. But I think kind of magazines, the covers especially, are sort of artifacts of like social history and are definitely worthy of analysis. Well, I know Anna Wintour was quite influential in like how she photographed the models on the cover. So one of the kind of earlier ideas I had was mapping like where the model's face or their eyes was on the cover rather than the text. But I didn't know if that would have a strong narrative behind it as much as the text did. And then another idea I had once I kind of collected the data, I was more thinking about the story, was if I could analyze spatially where the text was on the page and if that had kind of shifted or changed over time. But I thought I'd keep the narrow quite focused. The focus quite narrow. So yeah, that's how I ended up on just the text coverage. Yeah, definitely. I think definitely where I am in my like current programming journey, sometimes the ideas I have in my head are a bit more advanced or complex than what I could at the time program myself. So sketching, I guess, helps me kind of refine the vision for the project without feeling limited by kind of my technical capabilities. And I do spend more of like my day job in kind of like the UI design space. So things like color choices, typefaces, those are all very important to me. So yeah, I love kind of doing a mood board and stuff.
I mean, you talked before about kind of keeping notes or a document going about ideas and curiosities, and I guess are you also someone who kind of collects just things that are nice and things that inspire, like colors and typeface that you might not use the very next day, but you've always got that kind of, I don't know, that catalogue of references if you just need to unblock some creativity at some point.
Yeah, I really think it's hard to keep everything in your
Yeah.
head, and I love to just write things down or else I forget it. So if I'm ever stuck creatively, I have a Figma board, just random bits and pieces of art, pictures, anything like that, which I can go back and reference. And I mean, you never know when it's useful for a
Absolutely.
project.
Yeah.
When I first started the project, I think Apple had just released a feature where on pictures you could like highlight the
That's
text
right.
in it
Yeah.
and copy that.
Yeah.
And so at first I thought I could try to use something like that, like text detection methods, which I did try that in using Python and OpenCV again, but I just wasn't having much luck with it. I think it just wasn't as consistent and as accurate as I'd like it to be.
Right.
And for a project that was the crux of
Yeah.
its success, I really wanted that to be
Yeah.
as accurate as possible. So I ended up kind of importing the images into like Figma, and then covering the entire cover in a white rectangle, and then covering where the text areas were with like a black rectangle. And that made it much easier to just say how many black
I
pixels
see.
are there compared to like the entire
So make it as
height of it.
contrasting as possible rather than relying on the
Yeah,
tool to do it from an image of the cover itself. Yeah, that makes sense.
exactly. Yeah, because one of the issues I ran into was the text on the covers of the magazines. It's all different typefaces. It's all different weights, different colors. The background's really noisy, so it's hard to get the code to like pick that up. But just having kind of that black on white made it a bit simpler. And maybe if I kind of progress in my OpenCV knowledge,
Yeah.
I could get something automated to work. But yeah, I think it was more of like it was definitely a trade-off in terms of how much time do I want to spend trying to finesse this bit of code versus can I actually save time by just doing it myself.
Thank you for joining us for this Explore, Explain highlights episode. As always, the full episode is available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. We hope to see you again soon on another episode of Explore, Explain.